Now, sticking with now the question of food security and whether when they talk about food security, they actually want to see us being able to feed ourselves properly is a good one. So let's move on to that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. We will get to somewhere near there anyway. As it stands, 2/3 of adults in this country are overweight and half of those are obese. And the government has just announced last month that it's going to come up with yet another food strategy to sort everything out. As the image accompanying the press release shows, it's got off to a rather inauspicious start with a depiction of a supermarket trolley laden with many of the root causes of ill health. With this in mind, it comes as little surprise to find that the nascent Food Strategy Advisory Board is stacked out with industry heads who have every interest in preserving the status quo, or at least adopting it slightly in order to maximise profits on fake food. Of course, the National Farmers Union talks of prioritising growth and therefore is right behind it, by which they mean really falling in line with government initiatives to give up on the production of real food or looking after the environment, and to go in for subsidy based on inefficient energy schemes and artificial food via robotics and AI. This comes as the BBC's Panorama programme exposes what should have been common knowledge, that baby food is full of sugar. There is also talk of a sugar levy being applied to milk-based drinks, which makes it relevant that the only farmer to sit on this new board is a man named Sam Godfrey, who until last year was on the NFU's Sugar board, literally promoting a product that should not belong in any human diet. Now, notable by its absence from the board are the fisheries, and here is Elspeth MacDonald of the Scottish Fishermen's Federation, and she's written to Daniel Zeichner, the minister, to ask for an explanation as to why they should be omitted. And since this initiative says that it's concerned with health, why would there be no room at the table for the National Health Service, which spends the equivalent of the entire farming budget every 5 days? The remit of the Food Strategy Advisory Board is, ironically, to provide more easily accessible and affordable healthy food, to maintain our food security by building resilience in the face of climate shocks and geopolitical changes, strengthening the supply chain which operates so effectively to keep us fed, and inevitably to reduce the impact of farming and food production on nature, biodiversity and climate, whilst ensuring growth is at the heart of our strategy. It's a word soup, though not a digestible one, and I would say it's plainly influenced at its core by Legion people who have no interest in interest or understanding of the landscape which surrounds us, nor the means by which food may be produced for the mutual benefit of the farmer and the consumer. Exhibit A in this regard would be the latest offering from UK Fires, who wrote the Absolute Zero document in 2019, which attempted to suggest that it's possible for an entire country to stop producing any carbon dioxide. This time round, they're suggesting doing anything except for actually growing things. They say here technologies relating to electrification, alternative protein production, precision agriculture, and controlled environment agriculture must be adopted at scale. So when it does come to growing things, mainstream industrial agriculture dictates that this comes at a significant cost, both to the land and, of course, anyone eating that which has come off it. As reported on consistently by UK column, ultra-processed food is the result of a system driven by chemical inducements at every turn. And one of these is the constant application of pesticides, another subject ignored thus far by the board. However, the suggestion that something toxic enough to kill insects could present a danger to people has got through to the World Health Organization, which remains determined to do nothing about it. The UK government prefer to employ more or less the same head in sand technique wherever possible, and this is from 2021, in which they attempt to dismiss any causal link between consuming toxins and getting ill, stating here that evidence has not established these causal links between low-level long-term pesticide exposure and health impacts. That said, they do report on a regular basis on the pesticide residues found in foods coming into and grown within the UK. Now, a link to this document will be in the show notes, and if you really do want to know what you are eating or might be eating, then I would urge you to scan through it. Not only are a bewildering array of pesticides listed, but an extremely high percentage of the food tested was found to have pesticide residue present. Of course, it remains up to the government to set the maximum limits. Now, rather than go through a mass of chemicals, I'll focus on just one in order to illustrate just how little regard the government and the industry has for health. It's noted that there's an issue with sodium chlorate, and this is a weed killer which is banned in the UK and the EU. But because it's also used in what's called microbiological safety, the term they give for killing anything that isn't already dead, the government states that these residues are unavoidable and important for the maintaining of microbiological control, vital for food safety. So we are not treating these results as breaches of the maximum residue limit. So in other words, absolutely, they do what they please in that regard. And they go on to say that they're not advising any organisation to change its practices, but that they are going to, quote, consider what to do about chlorate residues in food and water. Now, to reinforce the point that there is no pressure to act, this is what happens when companies do exceed the limits. Which is that they get a letter sent to them and they're given 4 weeks to provide a statement for inclusion in the report. The expert committee on pesticide residues reviews any replies received, and this is how much they care. Supplier response is none. Now, the involvement of Nesta confirms that behavioural change really is at the heart of all of this, which sets the conditions for more and more farmland to be taken from its owners. This is a document from 2023 in which controlling obesity was linked solely to the input of calories, regardless of nutritional content, a form of social credit system, therefore, which can be applied across the board. The media continues to reinforce the narrative that a diet of whole foods devoid of chemicals is silly and difficult, here showcasing Gwyneth Paltrow, who's taking up content space with the news that she eats bread. And finally, we should not forget the words of a previous Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, who was adamant that the world's most harmful herbicide, glyphosate, was an integral part of regenerative farming, thereby confirming that when it comes to health, food and nutrition, neither the government nor industry should ever be listened to. Now, you spoke at the start about food security, and I think this is all very much part of the process by which food security is stripped away, either via subsidy or so-called innovation, in that farmers are pushed away, exactly like Sandy's been described. People are pushed away from being able to control the land that they may own or indeed have access to. And it just looks like it's going to be a sort of a one-way journey from here. I don't know if you have any particular thoughts on any of that.
No, but I'm sure we'll talk more about it in extra.
Absolutely, we will.
Sure. Okay, well, look, let's move on. And